quite as high on Friday, but still a bit milder than it has been. So chopping and changing a little bit more as we go into the weekend in particular. Generally temperatures on their way up, but there is the possibility, that's all it is at this stage, of a wet and windy spell for some of us on Sunday.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton tonight. The leader of no opposition only had one thing on his mind at PMQs today. Was it the looming threat of war in Ukraine? The national insurance increase? No, of course not. It was this.
The Ministerial Code says that ministers who knowingly mislead Parliament will be expected to offer their resignation. Does the Prime Minister believe that applies to him?
Obsessed. In my digest tonight, I ask, isn't it clear now that the political and media establishment who have effectively shut down in anticipation of the Sue Gray report don't care about what's best for this country? I'll get the verdict of my panel too. With me this Wednesday, Daily Mail columnist Amanda Patel, social media activist Adam Brooks, and political commentator Daisy McCann. As exemplified by Starmer's obsessive questioning, have we lost our sense of perspective over Partygate? Tory MP Andrew Rosendale and Mark Littlewood, Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs, are on totally opposite sides of this debate, and they'll be going head-to-head in the clash at 9:20. Is the hysteria over a birthday cake proof the Remoaner establishment want to bring Boris down? Well, Spiked Online's chief political writer Brendan O'Neill investigates that in The Outsider. And is it an insult for a Tory MP to claim that COVID rules were being broken in most homes? Or should Brits just be encouraged to face up to their own lockdown misdemeanours? I'll put that to the panel at 10. As a new documentary is set to raise fresh questions about the Madeleine McCann investigation, is the case against murder suspect Christian B breaking down? And could the Russians have abducted her in an organised plot? Investigators and authors Anthony Summers and Robin Swan, who've spent over a decade looking at Madeleine's disappearance, unpack all the latest developments at 10:20. Should we scrap GCSEs and espouse students who threaten free speech in order to give our next generation a fighting chance at a future? Columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddell proposes a tough love plan to level up our education system in a compelling Uncancelled at 10:40. Spotify's most valuable podcaster Joe Rogan railed against COVID censorship in his massive interview with mRNA pioneer Dr. Robert Malone.
Ban you for, in their eyes, what they think is a justifiable offense.
And sure enough, one of the most famous musicians in the world, Neil Young, is pressuring the streaming service into dropping the straight-talking broadcaster. But what gives pop stars the right to try to shut down freedom of speech? My panel will tackle this and more of the day's headlines in the media buzz at 10:30. Plus, breaking tonight, Prince Andrew has demanded a trial by jury in the sexual assault civil suit brought by Virginia Jeffrey. Royal expert Robert Jobson will break down the Duke's official response and what might come next in Crown Jewels at 9:30. Also, I'm going to bring you the front pages that Downing Street are desperate to see throughout the 10 p.m. hour. Plus, I'll coronate another Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. Good riddance to Plan BS. Today marks the end, in England at least, of the draconian restrictions on our lives that were never necessary. Don't believe me that mask mandates, vaccine passports, hospitality restrictions, nightclub closures and never-ending work-from-home orders don't work? Just look at the stats. England's COVID death rate since Freedom Day on July the 19th last year is 37.3 per 100,000 people. Wales has a rate of 37.7, Scotland 44.3, and Northern Ireland 48.2. So when Drakeford and Sturgeon tell you the Westminster government's lack of controls are irresponsible in some way, the media should make it clear that their restrictions are doing nothing to reduce COVID deaths, but doing a hell of a lot to destroy lives and livelihoods. I also want to say good on Morrison's supermarket, which is no longer asking customers to remain muzzled. But shame on Sainsbury's for deciding to continue with the mask farce. Let's take a look at tonight's No BS panel now. It's the Daily Mail star columnist and sensational broadcaster Amanda Platell, the publican and campaigner Adam Brooks, and the political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. But before I get to them, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Our top stories tonight. Number 10 has confirmed it still hasn't received Sue Gray's report into the alleged parties at Downing Street, which are supposed to have taken place during coronavirus restrictions. The Prime Minister told the Commons today he won't resign after the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer accused him of misleading Parliament on the parties. Labour is demanding Sue Gray's report is published in full after Cabinet Ministers previously suggested the findings may be redacted for security reasons. In international news, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has today urged Americans in Ukraine to strongly consider leaving now amid concerns Russia could invade the country. Russia has around 100,000 troops on its border with Ukraine. Antony Blinken said that the security situation in the area is unpredictable due to the increased threat of Russian military action.
Our message now for any Americans in Ukraine is to strongly consider leaving. And if Russia invades, civilians, including Americans still in Ukraine, could be caught in a conflict zone between combatant forces.
Here, Downing Street insists Boris Johnson had no role in authorising the evacuation of animal welfare activist Pen Farthing and his animals from Afghanistan. It's after an email released by the Foreign Affairs Committee indicated the Prime Minister did approve a charter flight for the former Marine after Kabul fell to the Taliban last summer. The rescue effort led to allegations that animals had been prioritised over people. During an interview in December last year, Boris Johnson was asked if he had authorised the evacuation.
No, that's complete nonsense, but what I can tell you is that I think that the operation of pitting to airlift 15,000 people out of Kabul in the way that we did over the summer was one of the outstanding military achievements of the last 50 years or more.
Boris Johnson speaking last year. Within the last hour, lawyers for the Duke of York have issued their response to a civil sex case brought by Virginia Giuffre in the United States. Miss Giuffre claims Prince Andrew sexually abused her when she was 17, 2 decades ago. Prince Andrew's legal team have submitted an 11-page document to a New York court after a previous motion to dismiss the case was denied. It outlines the Prince's denial of all the allegations against him. And a robot has performed delicate keyhole surgery on a pig without human help for the very first time. According to a study, the robot excelled at the procedure, which required a high level of precision. Researchers said it's a significant step towards fully automated operations on human beings. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Dan Wootton and Tonight.
Okay, I don't know about you, but I'm getting really annoyed with this farce now. For over 48 hours, the entire political and media establishment have effectively shut down to await a report about parties that took place at number 10 Downing Street well over a year ago. Of course, those parties were wrong and are rightly being investigated. I expressed my fury about the nonsensical and inhumane regulations at the time, when the rest of the media, bar a few honourable exceptions, were demanding even tougher restrictions. None of us should have had to follow the loony and loopy laws, especially now we know those in power didn't bother to. But, and this is a big but, it's not the crime of the century. And the media establishment, who think they run the country, they've lost any sense of proportion. It's clear there is one goal: bring down Boris at any cost and try and damage Brexit in the process too. What's right for the country at a critical time in our exit from the pandemic, on the eve of a cost of living crisis, and with Russia on the brink of war with Ukraine, well, what's right for the country doesn't seem to come into it. You know who doesn't give a damn about what's right for the country? Angela Rayner, Keir Starmer, Mark Drakeford and Nicola Sturgeon. They are trying to sow discord. So too are the BBC. We know why they don't want a Tory government, because this one has finally threatened to clip the BBC's wings. I have to say shame on the Leader of No Opposition, Starmer, who at PMQs today didn't ask one question, not one question, about the Ukraine crisis or even the government's planned national insurance increase.
The Ministerial Code says that ministers who knowingly mislead Parliament will be expected to offer their resignation. Does the Prime Minister believe that applies to him? So since he acknowledges the Ministerial Code applies to him, will he now resign? Does the Prime Minister really not understand the damage his behaviour is doing to our country? So can the Prime Minister confirm that he will publish the full Sue Gray report as he receives it? How much damage are the Prime Minister and his Cabinet prepared to do to save his skin? Isn't this a Prime Minister and a government that have shown nothing but contempt for the decency, honesty and respect that define this country?
Yep, not a thing about Ukraine, not a thing about the cost of living crisis. You know who's making themselves look even more ridiculous in this mess too? The Westminster media mob. They've spent 18 months failing to report on these parties, which some of them even attended. I have that on good authority, by the way. And now they try to convince the country we should all be gripped by this sorry saga, even though they don't know what they're talking about.
Could we see it? Well, honestly, I don't know. Maybe next week, maybe the week after.
It could be then, it may not be then, but all is quiet at the moment here on the street. You can't quite hear the ink dry, but we understand it has been written.
It looks very likely now that it will be published tomorrow.
When we might get this report, this crucial report, and in what form are we going to get it?
If only we knew.
Number 10 telling us they have still not received the Sue Gray report.
Busy doing nothing much. Waiting, wondering if the findings of a report into rule-breaking in Downing Street will make life impossible for Boris Johnson.
That report led the BBC 6 o'clock news tonight. We have lost all sense of perspective. If this is a fair fight, by the way, why aren't the BBC and all the usual suspects demanding that the police investigate Keir Starmer for his very obvious COVID rule breach? But of course they're not. Oh yeah, there he is. Downing Bear. And he claims it was a work meeting. Yeah, right. Partying, were you, Mr. Starmer? But of course they're not investigating Starmer because this has become much more than about COVID rule breaches. It's finally an opportunity for his long-term enemies to banish Boris from number 10. And by the way, I'm angry with Boris. He fluffed much of his pandemic response. He became addicted to lockdowns and restrictions and then allowed all sorts of nonsense to go on at number 10. So I'm angry with Boris, but I am convinced it's not up to the BBC to insist a PM elected with an 80-seat landslide majority that he must go. We're not stupid, and we see what's going on. Calm and patience from Tory MPs is required. The time has come for them to block out the media hysteria. To respond now, my superstar panel. It's the Daily Mail star columnist and broadcaster Amanda Platel, the publican, social media sensation and campaigner Adam Brooks, and the political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. So, Amanda, it was your newspaper, the Daily Mail, this morning that agreed with me that we've lost all sense of perspective.
Yes, Dan. They just thought, what is Dan Wootton thinking? We're going to run that because that'll sell papers. The truth is, it does. And the reason, the Daily Mail is incredibly in touch with what millions of people think. I wrote in my column on Saturday this very subject, and my mailbag and my emails and everything were just huge. We have 56 million adults in this country, and are you going to try and tell me that none of them ever broke the rules? Did none of them ever? I know that, caveat, there are lots of people who had to self-isolate, who had really, really miserable times. But the majority of the population, I've got a girlfriend, okay, I'm not going to name her on national TV, who bought her married lover a builder's belt. You know, those big leather things? You wouldn't know about this, Dan. It's about it's about building stuff. With
how dare you?
With things like hammers and things in it. And he would knock on her door and say, boiler man's here.
Lever.
And then she would let him in, and then as he left, he would say, I've got to come back in a few days, this is not looking good. People, they did all sorts of things that were little or large to break the rules.
In your column, you also made the point that you're no fan of Boris Johnson.
I'm not. I never have.
So it's not like you're sticking up for Boris because you're some slavishly loyal Boris supporter.
Quite the opposite. I mean, Dan, he does not like me at all. We've been sort of enemies for a very long... Not enemies, but for a very long time. But I recognise that he's an incredibly successful leader.
He refused to go to lunch with you?
He said... I won't say what he actually said. Let's make it nice. He said, I will not break bread with that bloody woman. But then when I reminded him that he had an election coming up and I had lots of readers, he changed his mind. But the key thing is that Boris is successful. The country will be... If we allow a leadership challenge to go on now and we end up with someone like, Rishi or Liz Truss, or... They're pygmies. And we will end up with a Jeremy... I was going to say Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh, thank God it's not him.
With a Keir Starmer government. It'd be a disaster. I mean, what are they thinking of?
Adam Brooks, and I know you've been very critical about Boris's response to the pandemic, even though you supported him over Brexit, but can you understand my point that it feels like the BBC are almost trying to force Tory MPs' hands here because they are literally covering this one story? I mean, Laura Koonsberg, leading the 6 o'clock news, literally saying, we don't know anything, we're all sitting out here, we don't know when the report is going to run. That is not your lead story.
They're frothing at the mouth, aren't they?
They want him out.
Of course they want him out. And I think it does go back to Brexit, and there are Remainers that are desperate to get him out. There's loads of reasons. I mean, look, I was angry with Boris for the parties. I've loved him, I've hated him all the way through, on off. But there's bigger things going on in the world. We've got Ukraine, we've got the poorest families struggling with their energy bills, and, my industry's struggling We've got a lot coming up in April that could ruin us. You know, let's keep him there for a couple of months. Let's sort this.
A couple of months? That's not very generous.
No, look, let's sort this out in a couple of months, Amanda. You know, let's delay this. Look, it's being investigated. What are we going to get from a new Prime Minister now in all these troubles? What are we going to get?
Daisy, you've obviously been part of, in the past, the Westminster media mob that I'm talking about, and they are working themselves up into a frenzy. And surely you can agree they have lost sight of the bigger picture here, because yes, it's bad what happened, but it's not the only story in the world.
I actually think it's you that's lost sight of the bigger picture here, because it was only, I think everyone's got bored. People like you, and I totally understand it. It's boring because we haven't got anywhere with this story. But you're losing sight of the fact that the Prime Minister almost certainly lied to Parliament. And so it's not surprising that Westminster journalists think this is a massive story and that the Prime Minister is being investigated by the police is a massive story.
But I've always
and
said,
that the Prime Minister
Daisy,
might have to leave his job is a massive story.
I've always,
and to say,
over having a
is
birthday
stupid.
cake with a few of his...
But it doesn't really matter what.
I think
it's like people saying,
does.
oh, he was ambushed by a cake and oh, he didn't rob a bank. That's not the point. He knew he was lying and he lied. And you're not allowed to do that as Prime Minister. And I think we all need to remember a couple of weeks ago when we all started to realise that this party had happened on May the 20th and then this other party had happened on the eve of Prince Philip's funeral, and then an email had gone out to 100 people saying bring booze, and then there was a cake. And now we're all obsessing about the birthday cake. It's not the birthday cake that was the big deal. It was the endless
So
breaking
why
of
didn't we
rules. It was
find
the
out last
suitcase-
year about this? These people have sat on this.
Yes, and I completely agree. The deputy editor of The Sun, who was working at Number 10 at the time, went to The Sun and didn't give his own paper the story. That is outrageous, and that is him trying to save his own skin. And
Well,
some
is it
journalists
because they
have
didn't
faith.
think it was a criminal... They didn't think it was a capital
Yes, because they didn't want to get caught. They were all complicit, and none of them wanted to own up, and none of them wanted to dob everyone else in. None of them wanted to lose their contacts.
The lying thing is very interesting because, of course, I think it's despicable that politicians lie. I think they all lie. I mean, David Cameron lied during Project Fear over Brexit. Theresa May lied when she constantly said, you know, no deal was better than a bad deal and then refused to do it. I mean, I'm not excusing it, but to sort of claim that Boris Johnson is the first Prime Minister who's lied and that he should go as a result of telling a lie, I think is a little bit naive.
Saying no deal's better than a bad deal or a bad deal's better than... That's not a lie you can prove. That's her opinion. And that's a
well, no,
very
but we can
different
prove
thing.
that she then wasn't prepared to go for a no deal. That's
Yes,
what I mean.
but what I'm saying is, if you ask somebody to lead and they give you your opinion, and then you either, with
Because you didn't mean
hindsight,
that.
are
It's a
able
lie.
to say she or he wasn't right, is very different than saying there was no party, or saying parties are disgusting, I can't believe this happened under my nose, and then saying, oh, I forgot, I went to one.
And Daisy, I just want to pick you up on one other point, because I have been critical of the fact that there were these parties when we were having to do this, when we were having to go through it all, and I've spoken about it a lot. But when ITV News and BBC News are leading their bulletin on the fact that a cake was brought into the Prime Minister for 10 minutes on the day of his birthday after a work meeting, can you not understand that that's when I feel like the Westminster media mob have lost sight of perspective? I'm not saying
Yes, I can
the
understand
parties are
that.
not a big story, but I think the way it's been covered is not being done with any sense of perspective, and that's why I have the suspicion that actually they're on a mission to bring down Boris at any cost.
I can understand that, but what makes me very uneasy today is that there has been a narrative which has been pushed out, and I know perfectly well it's been pushed out by spin doctors, both at Conservative Central Office and at Number 10, and every single Conservative MP in Prime Minister's Questions today was coming back saying, you, the Labour Party and the opposition, should be talking about Ukraine and what's happening there. That is their line, and I feel that actually journalists are swallowing it hook, line and sinker because they want to appear like the grown-ups in the room, and they're not the grown-ups in the room.
Though, in 6 questions today, Keir Starmer could have asked 1 about Ukraine. He could have asked 1 about the cost of living crisis. That would be perspective.
But you know he doesn't want to raise Ukraine, because remember when, you know, Daisy and I, you're too young, Adam. Daisy, you're too young as well. When Margaret Thatcher...
I'm too young.
Oh, sorry. Everyone here is too young except for me. Margaret Thatcher tanking in the polls in '83. Yeah. Everyone plotting against her. They said she had 6 months before they were going to kick her out. Jumped in a tank.
Absolutely.
Invaded the Falklands. And I think the reason that they're not giving him Ukraine is because they don't want Boris to be seen as
And Boris knows his history and knows that a good war can help you in the polls.
And then she had a landslide victory, first since 1945.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, so just think...
very good points.
They don't want to give him
Very
Ukraine.
good points. Amanda Patel, Adam Brooks, Daisy McAndrew, much more from them as the night goes on. But coming up, as Prince Andrew demands a jury trial as he officially responds to Virginia Giuffre's sexual assault civil suit, royal expert Robert Jobson brings all the latest analysis on this bombshell twist. That's at 9:30. And up next in The Clash, with Labour and the mainstream media, as I just said, whipped into hysterics. Have we lost our sense of perspective over Partygate? Tory MP Andrew Rosendale, he's a big Boris supporter, and Mark Littlewood, Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs, go head-to-head. I want your verdict, though. It's most important to me. Dan@gbnews.uk is my email address. Tweet me at GBNews, and you can vote in our poll there too. I'll bring you the results straight after the break.
Good evening. A windy one tonight. Those winds steadily easing tomorrow. And for most of us, a bright, fine day with sunny spells and certainly across the south. Feeling really quite mild, certainly much milder than recent days. High pressure is just about holding on, but we do have this deepening area of low pressure just tracking to the north of Shetland, and those isobars really pinching together. So the wind's getting very strong across northern Scotland tonight. We have a Met Office yellow warning in place across Orkney in the far north of the mainland. Gusts of 70, maybe 75 miles an hour could cause some disruption. At the same time, a zone of rain will slink its way from southern Scotland, Northern Ireland to parts of northern England and Wales, but with all the clouds and the very strong winds, temperatures will be holding up for most of us well above freezing. Will be a dull, damp start, though, for parts of Wales, particularly South Wales in the morning. Some of that patchy rain will trickle into Somerset, Devon and Cornwall through the morning as well. Not much rain further east, and brighter skies follow, so it's sunny spells for much of Thursday, but there will be showers in the far northeast, wintry on the hills, and a cold feel here with the wind, but elsewhere, temperatures well above the average and quite a bit higher than recent days. 10 or 11 degrees, Manchester, Belfast, London, Southampton, maybe 12. Quite quickly, though, those temperatures dropping during Thursday evening as the winds continue to ease. Light winds, clear skies could still lead to a frost for Friday morning. So a colder start on Friday morning, but again, generally dry and bright with some good spells of sunshine. It'll probably steadily cloud over from the west during Friday. Rain in northern Scotland, patchy rain at times, Northern Ireland, northwest England and Wales. But again, much of the east will be dry. Temperatures perhaps not quite as high on Friday, but still a bit milder than it has been. So chopping and changing a little bit more as we go into the weekend in particular. Generally temperatures on their way up, but there is the possibility, that's all it is at this stage, of a wet and windy spell for some of us on Sunday.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Rod Liddle and Brendan O'Neill both on the way, but time now for the clash. As the UK faces a looming cost of living crisis and a Russian invasion of Ukraine looms, Boris Johnson's critics and the media have instead focused on a birthday cake presented to the PM in 2020. In the House yesterday, Tory Sir Edward Lee tried to refocus the narrative onto more pressing issues.
When Europe stands on the brink of war and there is a cost of living crisis, can we please have a sense of proportion over the Prime Minister being given a piece of cake in his own office by his own staff?
And speaking to Radio 4's PM show last night, Conservative MP for Reigate, Crispin Blunt, reiterated the police, saying, "We've lost our sense of perspective on this." So, are Boris Johnson's most loyal supporters correct? Have we lost our sense of perspective over Partygate? I want to know what you think. Dan at gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at gbnews. We've got our poll running there too. But to debate this now and give their take, I'm joined by Conservative MP Andrew Rosendale and Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs, Mike Littlewood. So, Mike, let me kick off with you. You were a Boris supporter, I believe, but you actually think the Partygate inquiry isn't being blown out of perspective and this should be the end for the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I don't really hold a torch for any politician or political party. I think Boris Johnson's got quite a bit to commend him as a rather charismatic individual. There's quite a lot I like about him personally. But I think this is very serious, Dan. And you're right, you can say, for crying out loud, what's a piece of cake? You know, how many slices of Victoria sponge did the Prime Minister have when we've got problems in Ukraine and elsewhere in the world and in the economy? But I'd say the issue is this. This is about the rule of law. Boris Johnson's government were telling us on television, morning, noon and night, that the biggest restriction on our civil liberties ever witnessed in peacetime was a necessity to deal with a national emergency. And if we didn't comply with this, we were not good citizens and were indeed risking the lives of our friends and family. We've never seen a suspension of freedoms like it. Turns out, one, the people at Number 10 didn't really seem, on the face of it, to believe this advice themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't have acted in this fashion, presumably. Two, on the face of it, the rules and the laws were broken. I know there's an ongoing investigation. Sue Gray and the Met Police would pronounce on that. And three, even if you do make a misstep and break the rules, come out and be clean about it. All politics and politicians who get into trouble, it's always the cover-up that gets you, being seen to dissemble and be dishonest and not being upfront right at the start. If you say, actually, yesterday this happened, it was a mistake, I'm holding my hands up, it won't happen again, you get away with it. But there's a sense here that the Prime Minister hasn't been quite as straight as he might have been. And I think had he been earlier, this would have blown over. It's a problem almost entirely of his own making and that of his staff.
Andrew, how do you respond to that?
2 years ago, we had a general election and Boris Johnson won that election with the biggest majority of any Conservative Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher. Since then, he's had to face a huge amount, not only getting Brexit done, which thank goodness he has, but also dealing with the pandemic and all that's been associated with that. The idea that because some of his staff and some of the civil servants have been drinking wine, eating cheese, and a birthday cake was given to him. The idea that we drag a Prime Minister out of Number 10, turn the government into turmoil, give power, which is what will happen, to the civil servants for months on end while we go about choosing yet another leader. This is not what we should be doing. We should be thinking about why the people voted us into office and give the Prime Minister a chance to get on with the job of governing Britain and doing the right thing for our country. Give Boris the opportunity to do what the British people elected him to do.
Mark, don't you think there's a risk of the media elite the BBC, ITV News, Sky News, almost creating a drumbeat that is so loud that they force the hand of Tory MPs?
To an extent, yes, and I thought it was quite witty, Dan, your earlier observation that the sort of top item on the BBC 6 o'clock news was nothing's happened. That's pretty rarely a top item of any news channel that takes itself seriously. But there are unfolding events here, so you can understand why the mainstream media, even media hostile to the Conservatives and to the Prime Minister, would follow them. You know, we've had the Met Police now investigating. We're now told pictures are available somewhere on WhatsApp about what the Prime Minister was doing. So because there is some sort of new nugget every day, which, you know, I dare say Boris is tearing his blonde locks out about, that keeps the story going. And, you know, well, we'll wait for Sue Gray's report. I mean, that's almost become a meme now. You know, nobody can talk about anything until Sue Gray is pronounced upon the facts. So, yes, I think there is a certain desperation of following the story like a news hand, even then there's nothing to report. Dan, you're right on that. But there's quite a lot of unfolding and important things here. And listen, I've got some sympathy with Andrew. He's quite right. The British people elected the Conservatives with an enormous majority. But quite often Prime Ministers are removed, not by the electorate, but because something else happens in the meantime. Mrs Thatcher was removed. Tony Blair resigned, having won 3 elections in a row. And if, it's a big if, because I'm not across the facts, I haven't got these WhatsApp photos, but if the Prime Minister has lied to Parliament, if that has happened, that is egregious. That is totally unacceptable. Now, I don't know whether that's happened, but I don't think that that could be excused on the grounds that, oh, well, we don't want some turmoil in the Conservative Party, and he did get Brexit done, and he did very well at the last election. That probably would be an inexcusable offence were it to turn out to be true.
Andrew, if it is proven that Boris has told a porcupine in the House about these parties at number 10 Downing Street, how can he justify staying as PM?
I don't know what happened in number 10. I don't know who organised these parties or whether he deliberately has lied or twisted something in order to cover up. None of us know the truth. It's going to come out in the report. I'm more concerned about our country. We have so many challenges to face at the moment. We're in the biggest debt we've ever been. We have to motor with Brexit, rebuild our economy, deal with the issues that the government have to face on a daily basis. And there are things that Boris is doing that I don't agree with. I think this obsession with net zero and also the tax rises, I don't agree with all of that. But what I do think is that he's got the right instincts for this country. So whatever little mess we've got over it with this matter, I really don't think that trumps dealing with the serious issues that our country faces. And I'll say one other thing, Dan. I sense there's an agenda at work here. Oh, yeah. The Remainers are gathering and they see a chance to knock out Boris, get rid of Boris, get him out the way, and they will then try to put another leader in who could be softer on Brexit. This is very dangerous for those who want a proper Brexit to be properly followed through. And I would say to Mike and to everybody else, just be careful what you wish for. Boris is determined to follow through on what he was elected to do. He just needs to be allowed to get on with it. Please give him the chance to do his job.
Well, exactly. And also give him a chance in peacetime, you know, because for the bulk of his prime ministership in this term, he's been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think he made huge mistakes there. But I want to give him a chance to take Britain out of the pandemic. Mark, we're talking about perspective tonight. And look, I've always said that the stories of big parties at number 10 Downing Street are legitimate. And of course, we will cover in full the Sue Gray report. But can you not understand why some of us are becoming sceptical when you have every major mainstream news channel in the country last night leading on the fact that the Prime Minister was presented with a cake by his wife for 10 minutes on his birthday in 2020, a couple of months after he nearly died of COVID-19. I mean, you can understand why I feel like perspective has been lost.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know the details here, and the cake story, Dan, doesn't strike me on the face of it. Again, like Andrew, I don't know all of the details here. Doesn't strike me as egregious as the garden party on the face of it. I think what it speaks to, the potentially, and I've lost track of the whole list now, were the rules being flaunted casually and continually in Number 10 and by other government departments. I mean, almost if there was one egregious part that happened, a one-off that sort of slipped through, but was it systematic?
Yeah.
Were systematically in government departments?
I think it was, and that's why I think these rules should never have been in place. That's my takeaway.
I agree with you.
But exactly, but what worries me is you have a lot of folk on the other side saying, oh, the reason Boris needs to go is we need a strong Prime Minister who can institute more lockdowns if we need them, more restrictions if we need them. To me, that's taking the wrong lesson from this. The lesson we should take from this is never institute these types of restrictions on free British people. Just make it guidance. You know, if it was guidance, we would never have any of these issues and most people would follow the guidance.
I think that actually the restrictions that were brought in were way over the top. I didn't agree with a lot of it. I voted against all the lockdowns from the summer of 2020. And
good on you.
Really, I thought was completely wrong, taking away our freedom and liberties and our responsibility to make our own choices over our own lives. But the law was the law, and lots of people, I think, didn't follow them exactly as they should have done. How many people went for exercise longer than an hour?
Me.
You know, come on.
I'm proud of it.
So, you know, I really think this is a frenzy. And I say to Mark, the blob is out to get Boris. Michael Heseltine, he wants to undo Brexit, and there's lots of Remainers who are on manoeuvres over this. I want to put this aside now and let our Prime Minister get on with the job of governing Britain. I think that he deserves that chance. OK. So let's move on.
Well, look, that's a very important warning there from Conservative MP Andrew Rosendale, certainly one that I'm taking on board. And thank you so much, too, to the Director General of the brilliant Institute of Economic Affairs, Mark Littlewood. So who do you agree with? Well, Daz on Twitter says, we're potentially on the brink of a war with Russia, but the mainstream media would rather talk about a birthday cake. I know, I can't believe it. Tweety via Twitter says, it's the lies and the cover-up that is the issue, not the cake. And Mandy via email says, Dan, you were spot on. The media are absolutely in a feeding frenzy, believing they're going to topple Boris. I am a member of the public who is sick and tired of hearing their rubbish. Concentrate on the important issues that people are really concerned about. And your verdict is now in. Interesting one. 81% of you agree that we have lost perspective over the Partygate saga. Just 19% of you saying we're covering it, not here at GB News, but obviously in the rest of the media, in the right way. Fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for all your feedback tonight. Coming up, is Partygate proof that, as Andrew Rosendale says, rabid Remoaners are hell-bent on destroying Boris? Well, Spiked Online's chief political writer, Brendan O'Neill, has a theory on that one. He'll reveal it in The Outsider very shortly. But next, in the latest twist in the Prince Andrew saga, the embattled Duke asks for a jury trial as he officially responds to Virginia Giuffre's sexual assault civil lawsuit. Robert Jobson joins me with all the latest expert analysis. That's straight after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It's time now for Crown Jewels with Robert Jobson. And breaking tonight, Prince Andrew has asked for a trial by jury as he officially responded to Virginia Giuffre's sexual assault civil lawsuit. Lawyers for the shamed Duke set out a number of affirmative defences to the Epstein victim's claim she was trafficked to the Royal when she was 17, quote, without assuming the burden of proof and expressly denying any and all wrongdoing. They include a, quote, doctrine of unclean hands, which argues that Ms. Giuffre acted unethically or in bad faith in relation to the charges she has brought. There are also arguments that the claim should be dismissed because Ms. Giuffre is a permanent resident of Australia and that by entering into the 2009 sort of confidentiality agreement, really, with Epstein, a settlement anyway, big financial settlement, they say she waived the claims now asserted. Jobbo, big development here. Does this mean Prince Andrew is determined to clear his name in court, or is this just part of the legal game before a possible financial settlement with Giuffre?
Well, we know exactly what happens when you're dealing with a possible financial settlement is that they ratchet up the pressure, really, by saying, no, we're coming out fighting, we're going to hit you on all sides, we're going to question your character, your ability. And that's exactly what she's been doing about him for the last, 2 or 3 years. But now he's coming back, and he's also raising the point that, you know, she also helped with supplying other girls to Epstein. So they're trying to, in many ways, this is simply him ratcheting it up, and it leaves his options open. But the fact that he says he wants a trial by jury suggests he does want to clear his name. But given his performance with Emily Maitlis on the BBC, I'm not sure that he's going to stand up to any rigorous questioning, really, if he goes on the stand.
There's a lot riding on this, isn't there, Jobbo? Because really the only way that he could have any sort of return to public life, I mean, I don't think it would be really in a formal royal role, but to be accepted in any way by the public, he has to win this case, surely.
It's high stakes. He has to win it. He's got no choice. If he goes into court, remember, we've just recently that we had revisited the whole Duke and Duchess of Argyll case, which is going back in time. You know, the Headless Man case, where all details came out of sexual shenanigans and God knows what. And you can imagine the detail that's going to come out in this case, which would be absolutely devastating to the royal family and to Prince Andrew. It'd be hugely embarrassing. I mean, the reality is, I've always thought he should have settled ages ago and moved on. And, you know, the fact is he wasn't going to have a public life. But clearly now the royal family have said he's a private citizen, he wants to defend his name, and he's going to come out fighting, and that is exactly what he's doing. And I think there are certain elements of this case, though, Dan, that, you know, she's not in this Virginia Giuffre, she says that she's an abuse victim, but there are elements of her case that don't really stack up. And that's what a judge said previously when they were dealing with a criminal case, that actually some of her evidence was pernicious and impertinent. It was described and flawed.
Jobbo, have we heard anything from Harry and Meghan on this? Because obviously we know Prince Charles absolutely believed that Andrew couldn't be a working royal. We know Prince William felt the same way. What's interesting to me in all of this is you've got Harry and Meghan basing themselves in America. They love to comment on everything to do with the royal family. This is an American trial, but they've kept very quiet about Prince Andrew.
Well, I think it'd be in their interest to keep quiet, actually, on this one, because it's not one for sort of in America for general comments. The reality is, you know, they've got nothing to add to this. I mean, the point that William and Charles are involved is because we have a 95, nearly 96-year-old queen who has to allow the next two monarchs, as they are, to sort of give guidance on how the monarchy should be dealing with such a devastating situation as this. Now, I know for a fact it's easier if it's, if your brother, you're going to be closer to the situation. It's easier, say, for Prince William or even Prince Harry to have a view on it if it's your uncle. You're not going to be as close to your uncle as you are to your brother. So I think Prince Charles has had heart-to-hearts with Andrew about this and believes his brother. But, we don't know what the situation is with William, and I think there's been some very decisive action, and probably, it slightly smacks me out, as a bit slightly wrong about the fact that he was stripped of everything, and I understand why they've done it, but before there'd been any trial, before there'd been any evidence against him in terms of hard evidence, it was almost like the royal family were saying, you're guilty, and I thought that was a very strange thing to do.
Well, I understand that point, Jobbo, because, of course, we have to go by innocent until proven guilty. I guess it's about his conduct, though, isn't it? The fact that he said...
It's about that. It's about his judgment, his conduct.
Yeah, and he said in that Newsnight interview, didn't he, that he was going to help the authorities, and he never did. He never did. And he's cooperating now because there's a case. But look, fascinating analysis, Jobbo, the latest with Prince Andrew. This saga
Amazing
runs
story, yeah. It goes on and on down this one, I think.
On, and it's messy, and it's bad news for the royal family, and I just feel sorry for the Queen. But, Jobbo, thank you so much. Coming up, should Brits be encouraged to face up to their lockdown misdemeanours, or is a Tory MP's claims that COVID rules have been broken in most homes a total insult? My Superstar panel react to that in the Media Buzz at 10. The next is Partygate, a Remoaner revolt and nothing more. Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill is today's outsider. He tries to make sense of the hysteria sparked by a birthday cake straight after the break.
Good evening. A windy one tonight. Those winds steadily easing tomorrow. And for most of us, a bright, fine day with sunny spells and certainly across the south, feeling really quite mild, certainly much milder than recent days. High pressure is just about holding on, but we do have this deepening area of low pressure just tracking to the north of Shetland, and those isobars really pinching together. So the winds getting very strong across northern Scotland tonight. We have a Met Office yellow warning in place across Orkney in the far north of the mainland. Gusts of 70, maybe 75 miles an hour could cause some disruption. At the same time, a zone of rain will slink its way from southern Scotland, Northern Ireland to parts of northern England and Wales, but with all the clouds and the very strong winds, temperatures will be holding up for most of us well above freezing. Will be a dull, damp start though for parts of Wales, particularly South Wales in the morning. Some of that patchy rain will trickle into Somerset, Devon and Cornwall through the morning as well. Not much rain further east, and brighter skies follow, so it's sunny spells for much of Thursday, but there will be showers in the far northeast, wintry on the hills, and a cold feel here with the wind, but elsewhere temperatures well above the average and quite a bit higher than recent days. 10 or 11 degrees, Manchester, Belfast, London, Southampton, maybe 12. Quite quickly though, those temperatures dropping during Thursday evening as the winds continue to ease. Light winds, clear skies could still lead to a frost for Friday morning. So a colder start on Friday morning, but again generally dry and bright with some good spells of sunshine. It'll probably steadily cloud over from the west during Friday. Rain in northern Scotland, patchy rain at times, Northern Ireland, northwest England and Wales. But again, much of the east will be dry. Temperatures perhaps not quite as high on Friday, but still a bit milder than it has been. So chopping and changing a little bit more as we go into the weekend in particular. Generally temperatures on their way up, but there is the possibility, that's all it is at this stage, of a wet and windy spell for some of us on Sunday.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Brendan O'Neill is tonight's outsider. Now, along with Brendan, I was one of the only media folk railing against Boris Johnson's draconian restrictions at the start of the pandemic, and I've been as outraged as any, although not surprised that those in government refused to stick to their own rules. But come on, are we really going to tear down a democratically elected Prime Minister over this? Partygate has turned into a farcical feeding frenzy, with the MSM foaming at the mouth, baying for the Prime Minister's resignation. And I'm sorry, but there's more to this than just birthday cake. This stinks of Ramona revenge. The political and media establishment have campaigned against Boris Johnson from the moment he replaced Theresa May. They blamed him for Brexit and have always wanted to do everything possible to derail the biggest democratic mandate in the history of British politics, to leave the EU. So is this hard proof the Remona establishment want to bring down Boris? Well, Spiked Online's chief political writer, Brendan O'Neill, is here now to analyse. Brendan, this is no longer a neutral examination of what happened behind the walls of Downing Street during lockdown, is it? It's become some sort of campaign by the media.
Absolutely. You know, I think a motley crew of Remoaners and middle-class leftists and BBC bigwigs are using this scandal to try to take down Boris and to take down Brexit. And they're not shy about that. You know, some of them are saying it outright. Lord Adonis said if Boris falls, then Brexit must fall too. We have Guardian columnists like Jonathan Friedland saying the real virus is Brexit and Boris is just the best known carrier of that virus. They're openly talking about taking down the democratically elected Prime Minister and the most electorally supported phenomenon in the history of this country, which is Brexit. So this kind of political skullduggery, this anti-democratic skullduggery by sections of the media and cultural elites, that worries me far more than an illicit birthday party at Downing Street.
No, indeed. And by the way, Brendan, we have both been highly critical of Boris Johnson throughout the pandemic. We have been highly critical of the draconian civil liberty destroying laws that he enforced on all of us. So I certainly don't think that this is us blindly backing Boris at any cost, but it's about having a sense of perspective, isn't it? And working out what's going on. Why did the media not report on these parties for months and months and months when some of them had even been there, for example?
Absolutely. I mean, the timing of this scandal is very suspect. Obviously, Dominic Cummings is up to his neck in it because he's using it to get revenge on his former colleagues in Downing Street. And the media is just squeezing it for every drop that it's worth in order to wound the Prime Minister and to weaken the elected government. And, you know, as you say, me and you and other people too were stinging critics of the excesses of lockdown and the extreme variant of lockdown that we had in 2020 and also in 2021. And Boris should be held to account for those lockdowns, for the clampdown on civil liberties, for the economic damage that was done, for the impact on mental health and physical health as a result of closing down society. He needs to answer for those things. But I think at the moment, what's happening is we're obsessing over the rule breakers rather than the rules themselves. The problem was not that some people broke the rules. The problem is not even that the Prime Minister may have broken the rules. The problem is the rules. Why did we put up with this kind of legislation that restricted everyday life? That's what we need to talk about.
Brendan, you also have some concerns about this police investigation into Partygate. Can you explain why?
Yeah, I'm just worried about coppers sniffing around Downing Street. There's something about that that makes me feel uncomfortable. Now, of course, if someone in Downing Street very clearly committed an offence, then they should be held to account. They're not immune to the law. But there's something about the way in which the police are being cheered on by sections of the middle classes and sections of the media to really get stuck into the seat of political power and look for evidence of wrongdoing and criminality. It smacks a bit like the antics of a banana republic, and it just instinctively makes me feel uncomfortable. And I think it really ups the ante in Partygate in a dangerous way, because now we have the unelected armed wing of the state, which is the police, vast sections of the kind of bitter left-leaning establishment, and huge sections of the media gunning for a prime minister that was voted for by 14 million people. That should worry anyone who is concerned about democracy. So Partygate, in my view, has just gone too far.
And what worries me about it, Brendan, too, is that it's so obvious that Cressida Dick and the Met are simply reacting to the media hysteria around Partygate, because they were initially very clear that they weren't going to launch an investigation. And this is where the broadcast media establishment know that they have huge power, Brendan, if they choose to lead on a story night after night after night after night to put pressure on other parts of the establishment.
Well, that's exactly right. A dangerous precedent is being set here. You know, can the media whip up the police to take a certain form of action? That's not something that I think is very positive in society, if the kind of vengeful media can use the police in that kind of way. But, you know, some people are now saying, well, young students were fined for having parties and people were fined for visiting their mothers, and all sorts of terrible things happened during lockdown. So why shouldn't the government be held to account too? I think that's the wrong question. What we should be asking ourselves is, why did we tolerate the fining of people for socializing? Why did we tolerate allowing people to die alone because their loved ones weren't allowed to visit them? Why did we tolerate the putting of yellow tape around park benches and children's playgrounds? A lot of the people who are now gunning for Boris Johnson, they were enthusiastic supporters of those inhuman, illiberal measures. So that's what we should be talking about. How did we descend into that authoritarian hysteria, not obsessing over a birthday cake?
Oh my goodness, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And it's when I hear these folks say, the reason Boris Johnson has to go is because we need another prime minister, a new prime minister who can enact restrictions in the future, I think, my goodness, you've lost the plot. You've lost the plot. That's what you want. You want more restrictions. You want more lockdowns. It's nuts.
Yeah, this is the problem with the way in which their critique is being framed. It's not calling into question whether the lockdown was a good idea. I think it was a bad idea. It's actually saying we need people who can be trusted to do it properly. So it's actually preparing us for more authoritarianism in the future, rather than asking the questions that need to be asked, which is, why did our country go so mad for 2 years? So Partygate, look, we should hold the government to account. If they did bad things, they should be called out for that. But Partygate is now being used to retrospectively justify the worst form of authoritarianism in the history of this country, and it's being used to damage democracy, and that's why I'm worried.
Brendan O'Neill, fascinating stuff. I know you'll keep on this story. Thank you so much. We'll speak again soon, Brendan.
Thanks, Dan.
It's 10 o'clock. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Still ahead of us with the front pages incoming. Will the government be in for another hysterical string of Partygate headlines, or will some publications display just a modicum of reason? I'll bring you tomorrow's newspapers as soon as they drop throughout the next 16 minutes. Is it an insult for a Tory MP to claim COVID rules were being broken in most homes? Or should Brits be encouraged to face up to their lockdown misdemeanours? And after Spotify's top podcaster Joe Rogan railed against COVID censorship,
ban you for, in their eyes, what they think is a justifiable offence.
He's now become the target of a cancellation plot by none other than the musician Neil Young. Do pop stars have any right to try and shut down freedom of speech? Well, my superstar panel will tackle both of those topics in the Media Buzz next and at 10:30. Almost 15 years after the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, is the world's biggest missing persons investigation any closer to being solved? Experts Anthony Summers and Robin Swan look at the latest developments and whether they could see the case against the main suspect, Christian B, collapse. Should we expel students who threaten freedom of speech in order to give the rest of our kids a better education? Columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddle proposes a tough love plan to level up our education system. That's in Uncancelled at 10:40. Plus, I'll coronate another Greatest Britain and Union jackass before the end of the show. You don't want to go anywhere. First, though, all the news headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. The top stories tonight. Number 10 has confirmed it still hasn't received Sue Gray's report into the alleged parties in Downing Street during coronavirus lockdowns. The Prime Minister told the Commons he won't resign after the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, accused him of misleading Parliament on the alleged parties. Labour is demanding Sue Gray's report is published in full after Cabinet Ministers previously suggested the findings may be redacted for security reasons. In international news, the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has urged Americans in Ukraine to strongly consider leaving the country now amid concerns Russia could invade. Russia has amassed around 100,000 troops on its border with Ukraine. Antony Blinken said that the security situation in the country is unpredictable due to the increased threat of Russian military action.
Our message now for any Americans in Ukraine is to strongly consider leaving. And if Russia invades, civilians, including Americans still in Ukraine, could be caught in a conflict zone between combatant forces.
Antony Blinken. Well, UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Office continue to advise against all but essential travel to Ukraine. A spokesperson told GBNews the situation is under constant review. Downing Street insists Boris Johnson had no role in authorising the evacuation of the animal welfare activist Pen Farthing and his animals from Afghanistan. That comes after an email released by the Foreign Affairs Committee indicated the Prime Minister did approve a charter flight for the former Marine after Kabul fell to the Taliban last summer. The rescue effort led to allegations that animals had been prioritised over people. Lawyers for the Duke of York have cited over a dozen reasons why sex abuse claims brought against him in a US civil case by Virginia Giuffre should be denied. In an 11-page document submitted to the New York court, lawyers questioned jurisdiction and the statute of limitations, among others. Ms Giuffre claims Prince Andrew sexually abused her when she was 17, 2 decades ago. The Prince denies the allegations. A man has been charged in Texas, in the United States, with selling a gun to the synagogue hostage taker. Henry Michael Williams is accused of being a felon in possession of a firearm. The American authorities say he sold a weapon to Malik Faisal Akram. The Briton was shot dead by the FBI after holding 4 people hostage in a 10-hour standoff at a synagogue in the United States earlier this month. On your TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Dan Wootton and Tonight.
Tomorrow's News Tonight now on our Media Buzz. First front pages have just been delivered, so let's go to them. The Metro leads on the story that we were discussing with Robert Jobson, the Duke of York. They say it's trial by jury. The paper says the stage is now set for a showdown in a civil court against Virginia Giuffre. Do you know what, though? I don't know if this will happen. He has, at the moment, rejected the chance for an out-of-court settlement, but there will be a lot of back and forth going on here, and my sense is that there's no way Andrew can allow this to get to court. The National. This is my favourite newspaper, folks. It's the SNP propaganda sheet. Oh, I just love it. I love this front page. It's very well designed, actually. Lies upon lies upon lies. PM stumbles from one scandal to the next. SNP after leaks suggest he lied to Parliament again, this time over the Afghan animal rescue. But what I love most up the top, it's just so much wishful thinking about the independent referendum. Exclusive. Indy Ref 2 will happen in 2023, and we can rejoin the European Union within 5 years. Now, look, the National might think they can do that. It's obviously
complete rubbish because the EU will simply not allow that to happen unless Scotland adopts the euro. And front page of the Daily Telegraph in as well, national insurance will push prices, the PM warned. A report by MPs has revealed that we can expect higher prices in shops if the hike goes ahead. It can't go ahead. It simply can't go ahead. That planned increase in April is madness. And if Boris Johnson wants to win back his Tory backbench base, it has to go. My superstar panel, back with me now. They're not going anywhere. The Daily Mail columnist and broadcaster Amanda Plattel, the publican and campaigner Adam Brooks, and the royal commentator Daisy McCann. Breaking tonight, the delivery of Sue Gray's report into parties at Downing Street during lockdown could be delayed until next week. Redrafting, wrangling with lawyers and police and HR issues are being blamed for the frustrating and ridiculous hold-up. It's fair to say Sue Gray is driving me cray-cray with this delay at the moment. The latest spin from Boris Johnson's supporters is that we shouldn't care about it anyway, because we were all breaking the rules. Loyalists have been rallying around the Prime Minister following fresh Partygate claims, and Reigate MP Crispin Blunt issued this new line of defence. We all know the complexity of the rules we had to pass in order to try and combat the threat of the virus. Some of these rules made more sense in hindsight than others, which probably didn't achieve very much. But these are very difficult decisions being made, and it may very well be that probably inside most homes, inside most businesses, and inside most places of public administration, people may not have kept absolutely to the rules. Now, look, I think the draconian rules were always an impossible ask and that more people should have spoken out at the time when they were being enforced. And yes, most people probably did break them in some way, but we weren't the ones making the rules, were we? And Adam Brooks, this is what really annoys me, right? Because in the first lockdown, I did follow the rules. And at that point, I was living completely on my own. I had no family, no loved ones around me. And remember, I was publicly slating the rules. I was saying these are illogical, they're inhumane, they go against our human rights. I did follow them to begin with. So I often think sometimes with these Downing Street parties, it's the timing. And that's why there's the rage over the May parties. I think post-summer, most folk, including me, started making sensible decisions for ourselves about what we did. And I proudly say that I did break the rules from that point on. But in that first lockdown, when we were being threatened with constant arrest, even though I had immunity from COVID, because I had COVID in March 2020, I did follow them, and I do feel like a mug for doing so. Where do you stand on this? Were you following the rules, breaking the rules?
No comment. No, look,
you've got to be honest on this show.
Of course, I broke rules. You know, and I'll sit here and admit, you know, my business has probably made mistakes as well because a lot of the rules were so stupid.
Oh, they were ridiculous.
So you know, we make mistakes.
Plastic
staff make
screens.
Yeah,
and, you know.
Staff make mistakes. You know, of course, we all broke the rules. And
what was the worst rule you broke?
No comment. But,
you can't say.
He only has to answer me and not you.
If my Instagram feeds and my Twitter feeds are anything to go by as well, a lot of people didn't care that, you know, that they were being found out to break the rules. A lot of people, you know, weren't bothered about them. And I think we've got to look. A lot of older people stuck to the rules vehemently, you know. But a lot of younger people, there were so many parties on my Instagram feeds and such, you know.
Amanda, what was the worst rule that you broke?
Oh no, I can't say that. I did.
Any more married men? Sorry,
I did not say that was me.
That was her friend.
Okay. I have another friend who used to get her hairdresser to come with a big box of. He had a false lid on it, with bananas and cabbages on the top, and underneath was the hairdresser. And because you're allowed to do food deliveries.
I may have had an illegal haircut, Daisy McCann. Come on,
I may have too. Although I'm just naturally this colour.
Look, I think what we're getting here is most people broke the rules at some point.
Daisy, did you?
I actually didn't, but that was because I was in an incredibly privileged position because I moved in to my mum's house. So actually that, in some ways, was breaking the rules, but actually I did move before the rule came in when it was obvious it was happening so that I could look after her. She was on her own. But we had a lovely big garden. The weather was lovely. I had my whole family with me. So I didn't really need to break the rules. And so I'm not blaming people who were on their own, completely isolated.
Like us,
you know, I went and I did my own routes for my very natural, never for the first time in a very long time. But what really annoys me about this is reading. I don't know if you've been reading all the reports that the crime correspondent of the Evening Standard has been doing.
No.
He's been following for the last few months all the prosecutions of people
mad.
It doesn't just make you mad, it breaks your heart. There was an elderly man with health issues who couldn't afford food and went to his allotment, was pulling up some carrots, got caught by the police, got prosecuted and fined. This man is destitute. There are so many stories like that, and that's why my blood is still boiling.
Do you know what? I know he'll never do this, Daisy, but I would love it if Boris Johnson went to the House after the publication of this report and said, my staff made mistakes, I made mistakes. These fines are all gone.
Yes.
We're giving you the money.
Unbelievable move.
Give them an amnesty, because what it costs? It's like 160,000 people who got 100 quid fine.
Well, given some of the ridiculous things I've spent throughout this pandemic, it's chicken feed, isn't it?
It'd be the cheapest, best PR.
And I don't think he will do that, but I think he should. And the other thing I want him to do, Adam, I know you're with me here, I think he would win a lot of respect and a lot of popularity back if he said, these rules were wrong, we panicked, and we have to ensure that in the next pandemic we're much more sensible in terms of what we do by law and what we do by guidance and where we trust folk and where we let people make their own decisions.
Maybe more like Sweden.
Yeah.
You know, trust your people.
Yeah.
And yes.
And give some guidance and look, at a difficult time where, you know, there are more cases going around, maybe give a bit more public health messaging. But, you know, it was so over the top. It was so over the top.
I think what a lot of the restrictions have done is they've lost a lot of trust in government and the scientists now. So they were so stupid, some of the restrictions. Now people think all restrictions or everything that the health agencies do is stupid.
And that is going to take a long time to win back. But look, actually, you're going to love this one, Adam. When it comes to COVID hysteria on a national scale, France really does take the baguette. Take a look at this health spa that has implemented these bonkers measures for their swimming pool. So it's the Socio complex in southwest France, and it's erected individual partitions in the water to keep bathers apart in aquarobics classes. And in the thermal pool, these handy railings. Can you see them there? Yeah, these handy railings have made social distancing super easy, if a little depressing. Never mind swimming like fish. Those folk more like herded cattle. Oh, by the way, none of these ludicrous measures will do a thing to stop the spread of COVID. Not a thing.
If Dr. Hillary had his way, they'd all have masks on, swimming as well.
Now, what are you referring to? I know, but go on, tell everyone what you're referring to.
He said it on live on TV that people on the beaches technically should be wearing masks in the sea.
In the sea?
In the sea.
That is so
This is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Although
Doctors
Dan,
on TV saying things like this.
that picture did remind me. I know you won't believe this, but I did go to an exercise class this morning. It's not my natural habitat, but I really liked it because I got there and they'd drawn all these massive squares on the floor, and you had to stay in your square, which actually was really good because it was one of these like sort of dance classes.
It gave you some personal space.
And it gave me, because I'm like, look, I'm going to bump into you and you're going to bump into me, but I can stay in my square. I quite like this.
Daisy, that is not healthy. That is really not healthy.
COVID does not like signs on the floor. It stays away with signs on the floor.
It doesn't go through the signs.
Exactly, but it was good for the humans to stay in their box.
Daisy McCann, Adam Brooks, Amanda Platel, do stand by, because coming up, as Neil Young tries to strong-arm Spotify into dumping its top podcaster Joe Rogan over his COVID views, in what world should pop stars be allowed to try and silence free speech? My panel will tackle that story, more of the day's headlines in the media buzz, plus the latest front pages will come to you hot off the press. Will they be dominated by Partygate yet again? The next, as a new documentary is set to raise fresh questions about the Madeleine McCann investigation, is the case against murder suspect Christian B breaking down? And could the Russians have abducted her in an organised plot? Well, investigators and authors Anthony Summers and Robin Swan, who've spent over a decade looking at Madeleine's disappearance, will unpack the latest developments. That's straight after the break.
Hello again. For most, we've seen a lot of cloud this week, but generally it's looking brighter tomorrow with some sunny spells. Quite a strong wind blowing at first, but that'll ease, and quite mild as well, especially across the south. Low pressure is moving in, but high pressure is still hanging on across the south. These weather fronts bringing some rain to the northwest, but as that low moves close to the far north of Shetlands, we are going to see some very strong winds across northern Scotland overnight. Blustery and damp through Northern Ireland, central Scotland, Northern Ireland. But across Orkney in particular and parts of the north of the mainland, those winds could reach 70 to 75 miles an hour. There is a Met Office yellow warning in place. Further south, well, the breeze picks up, it stays quite cloudy and most of us will be frost-free, but not completely rain-free in the morning. Quite dull and damp across Wales, particularly Cardiff, Swansea, and there'll be some patchy rain trickling into southwest England. Not much rain further east. There will be showers coming into the northeast of Scotland, a bit wintry over the hills, and still very windy here in the morning, but the wind's steadily easing down and the breeze easing down elsewhere. So with the sunny spells that most of us will see, feeling quite pleasant with temperatures in the south, 11 or 12 Celsius, Glasgow 9, Belfast 9 or 10 as well. Feeling colder in the wind in the northeast, which will still bring a few showers here during Thursday evening, but for most it'll be light winds on Thursday night, leading into quite a cold start on Friday morning. More likely to see pockets of frost around to begin with on Friday, but we're also going to see some fine sunny weather again on Friday morning before things steadily cloud over from the west. Again, there'll be some rain at times across northern and western Scotland, and we could see a little bit for Northern Ireland, northwest England and Wales come the end of the day. But it looks fairly light and patchy. East Anglia, southeast England hanging on to the brightness, but definitely more changeable in the outlook, and there is the possibility of some wet and windy weather on Sunday.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Rod Liddle on the way, and we're going to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But first, it's the world's most famous missing child case. Madeleine McCann was 3 years old when she disappeared from her bed at a hotel in Praia de Luz while her parents had dinner just meters away. It shocked the country to the core, and it became the focus of worldwide attention too. Now, nearly 15 years after her disappearance, it still remains a mystery. In June 2020, German prosecutors named convicted rapist Christian B. as their prime suspect and said they believed he murdered her. But they've still not charged him with any offence. Now, a new Channel 5 documentary is about to cast doubt over Christian B.'s connection to the case. Husband and wife duo, the journalists Anthony Summers and Robin Swan, have spent years investigating Madeleine's disappearance, writing a book
and appearing in a landmark Netflix documentary. And they join me now. It is great to have both of you here. You've obviously covered this case for years. Do you think Christian B could be behind her disappearance, or is this potential new evidence about to be revealed on TV credible?
We have worked on it, of course, for many years, intensively for the book that we did, Looking for Madeleine. But in recent years, we've merely kept a watching brief and made sure that we read virtually everything that is written about it, and that's still quite a lot. One fears that Madeleine watching is, for some parts of the media, something of a sport, and one has to keep reminding oneself that this is a tragedy for the McCann family, and quite evidently a tragedy for the little girl.
Dan, looking at the coverage about this new documentary over the last few weeks, what we really see here so far are competing press leaks from two different documentary teams.
Yes.
One, the Channel 5 series you mentioned, and another, which is a program that's being made in Germany, clearly with lots of links to the German investigation and German prosecutors there. And the two documentary teams, in fact, say completely different things. The German team is claiming they've come up with shocking new evidence that supports the contention that Christian B was behind Madeleine's abduction, while the Channel 5 team say just the opposite, that they have now found at least one person who can supply an alibi for Christian B. That said, if you look closely at the reports about that alibi, what the woman in question actually says is that she spoke to him the day before and the day after, and that she was not with him on the day of Madeleine's abduction. So how credible these witnesses are, what they really say, that I'm afraid we, like you, have to wait until these documentaries air. But so far, on what we've seen of the reporting, neither one of them has got the goods.
Because you have previously said that you think it was most likely a planned abduction. And of course, there's been a lot of speculation around these potential Russian people trafficking gangs. Christian B, that's a bit of a curveball there, isn't it? Because he wasn't involved in any child trafficking, as far as we know.
Seems not to have been, but again, not evidence. We don't know whether he was or not. Nor do we know whether Madeleine disappeared as the result of a trafficking offence. There's so much stargazing and guessing in the media. What we did at the beginning was to take the Portuguese police reports, which were there were an enormous number of them. Whether one could rely on them or not was another issue. But we laboriously went through every single report and talked to as many people as possible and as many police as we could. And we reached the conclusion from various solid bits of evidence and solid testimony, in our view, that the apartment in which the McCanns were living was watched in the days tick-tocking by until the awful night that she disappeared. And there was rather good evidence from credible witnesses that a man aged about 30 with crops up in so many criminal stories, with a white van, and not funny, but you know what I mean. The white van is a sort of ubiquitous thing, who seemed to be standing in the street, concentratedly looking at the apartment in which the McCanns were staying and watching and waiting. And there was evidence that a similar man came in to the apartment, seen literally by the person living in the upstairs apartment. This man was said to be about 28, 30-ish, to have light blonde hair, and various other things about him, to be pockmarked. And this seems to fit with the suspect they have in Germany. We didn't.
I see, because obviously the reason why it's so critical and, of course, so traumatic for the McCanns is that if it was an organised people abduction through a child trafficking ring, there is the hope that Madeleine is alive. If it's Christian B, as the German authorities claim, the suggestion is that Madeleine is more likely to be dead.
Indeed. The McCanns, clearly all of these years, have continued to pursue the hope that their daughter could be alive. And we have always maintained that, you know, we as journalists don't have the right to deprive any family of that hope. The Met continues to work on the case as a missing persons case. So that, too, continues to leave open the possibility that Madeleine is alive. The other interesting element about Christian B is the fact that, you know, his sex crimes have extended from young children to a woman in her 70s. He is currently being investigated in connection with the rape of a young Irish woman. Now, that seems to most people like a stretch. They think you're either a pedophile or you're some other kind of sexual predator. But that's not necessarily the case. It certainly does not seem to be the case in Christian B's situation. And one of the things we found when we were doing our research was that Christian B is known to have worn strange masks and costumes in his attack on the older woman, the one for which he has been convicted. That was also a feature in the attack for which he's being investigated, that of the young Irish woman. Well, we were investigating a string of sex attacks on children in the Algarve in the time period around Madeleine's disappearance. And we had a story from one set of parents about their own two little girls, of young British children, who had a man climb into bed with them. That man was wearing a strange mask and other elements that seem very similar to the Christian B story. That man spoke English with what they thought was a German accent. So again, there are interesting circumstantial threads here that need to be fully investigated. And we, as yet, as journalists, don't know what the German police have.
But one thing that the German police say they have, and which is questioned, I gather, by the people making the current documentaries, is that they have evidence that Christian B's telephone, his mobile telephone, was in the area in which Madeleine disappeared in Praia de Luz at the right time on the night.
This is why whether this alibi is credible is going to be so critical. So we will keep on this story, and thank you so much for bringing us your expertise on it. That is Anthony Summers and Robin Swan, the husband and wife duo, who are two authorities on the Madeleine McCann disappearance. Thank you so much. Now, coming up, is scrapping GCSEs and coming down hard on students who threaten freedom of speech the answer to ensuring our children get a better education? Rod Little thinks so. He's going to present his 10-point plan to level up the education system. That's an Uncancelled shortly. But next, as Neil Young goes to war with Spotify in a bid to cancel top podcaster Joe Rogan, do pop stars have any right to try and shut down COVID freedom of speech? My panel will weigh in straight after the break. Plus, we'll have a look at the all-important newspaper front pages too.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview Channel 236.
On Sky, we're Channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. Lots of front pages have just been delivered. Let's take a look straight at them. The Independent lead with another accusation leveled at Boris Johnson that he lied over the evacuation of pets from Afghanistan. Allegedly, the PM intervened to prioritise an animal airlift of 173 dogs and cats last August. Johnson, of course, also awaiting Gray's official report into the Partygate scandal, which is currently being scrubbed by lawyers. The Guardian leads on the accusations flung at Boris Johnson that he lied about the evacuation of the Nalzad charity's animals from Afghanistan. He previously described the claims he prioritised animals over people as complete nonsense. However, a Downing Street spokesman has insisted the PM had no role in authorising individual evacuations. An admittedly quite arresting front page from the Daily Star. They have magicked up a tombstone for the PM's credibility, and they describe Boris as clinging on as he is accused of telling another whopper, referring to those animal evacuation claims. The Daily Express headline, Andrew shock, I want jury trial, adding that the Duke of York denies all allegations in the civil sexual assault case brought against him by Virginia Giuffre. The Duke of York has now taken the dramatic decision to face his accuser in court and potentially become the first member of the modern royal family to submit to being cross-examined over serious allegations. Of course, you know, it won't necessarily go to trial. This is how these things work in the US. Although, do you know, I said the same thing over my case with Johnny Depp, and we did get to court, so you never know, you never know. The Daily Mail headline reads, Tory MPs tell Boris, spike tax hike and we'll back you, as the PM attempts to get rebel backbenchers back on side following the Partygate scandal. They are urging him to rethink his plans for a national insurance hike. Also on the front page there, of course, Prince Andrew. They say Andrew's 41 denials over sex claims and bombshell for royals. I demand a jury trial. Let's just hope if he's in the witness box, he preps a bit better than before that interview with Emily Maitlis. More on the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel, the Daily Mail columnist and broadcaster Amanda Platel, the publican and campaigner Adam Brooks, and the political and royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. Now, you know we speak about all the time. Free speech is under attack constantly, and this time it's guitar-wielding veteran rocker Neil Young leading the charge. The 76-year-old has demanded Spotify remove all his music from its streaming service in a blazing row over what he calls vaccine misinformation spread by podcast heavyweight Joe Rogan, known for asking tough questions about our COVID response. In a now deleted open management, telling Spotify to have his catalogue taken down, the Heart of Gold singer wrote, they can have Rogan or Young, not both. I'm doing this because Spotify is spreading fake information about vaccines, potentially causing death to those who believe the disinformation being spread by them. This has all exploded in the liberal elite American media after Rogan's interview with mRNA vaccine developer Robert Malone, who has raised questions over the efficacy of the vaccines and spoken about mass formation psychosis.
And I don't know who these people are that are doing this, but they're doing one of the most important things about you reading out your history like that is to one of the most qualified people in the world to talk about vaccines.
I try really hard to give people the information and help them to think, not to tell them what to think. Okay? But the point is, if it's not okay for me to be part of the conversation, even though I'm pointing out scientific facts that may be inconvenient, then who can be allowed?
No, I don't care how important or famous you think you are. Shutting down freedom of speech is chilling, in my opinion. I've had Professor Robert Malone on my show, there we are, and, you know, I don't agree with him about everything, but he is an incredibly important voice, a credible voice, and it's shocking to me that people like Neil Young don't believe that we should even be allowed to listen to him. And Adam Brooks, what I find so fascinating about this whole battle is Spotify. You know, they are obviously a Swedish company, but they are really now becoming very Californian, very woke. They hire Meghan and Harry. Right. So what happens if Meghan and Harry say, it's me or Rogan? What happens if it's Taylor Swift who says it's me or Rogan? Do you know what I mean? I hope Spotify stand up to Neil Young, but I just wonder if they will.
Well, I think he's obviously quite a diva. You disagree with me?
I do disagree with you. I'm interested in what you've got to say, Adam.
In 2015, he removed all his music because he didn't agree that the sound quality was that good on Spotify. So I think Neil Young is someone that makes his demands known quite a lot, and he throws his toys out the pram. So I think we're on very dangerous ground again, you know, where someone with a big following is trying to stop someone else with a big following.
Yeah, but don't you have a bit of an agenda? What is that purple thing on your pocket?
That's in support of the NHS 100, Amanda. It's the unvaccinated...
Who don't vax. Who
no.
won't vax.
They're...
He's got...
Yeah, but what are you saying? That makes him an anti-vaxxer? It doesn't.
No, I'm supporting bodily autonomy, Amanda.
I'd support
Don't
that.
say that after a few vodkas.
But Amanda, if you support bodily autonomy, then you should agree that people have a right not to be vaccinated with that.
No, I was only making a joke. But I'm really against people, especially in the NHS, not being vaxxed. I just think you haven't got a right. You've got.
So we're going to.
Then you haven't looked at the latest science.
Well, look, I'm quite happy to be convinced on this, but I'm not convinced. I would not want someone treating me if I was in hospital.
You'll never know.
Yeah, but that's the point of it.
You should
but that's
never
the
know.
point of it. But don't you think Neil Young? This has just occurred to me. He's Mr. Trick, because my favourite song of his off Harvest, which is his first album, I was 14, and The Needle and the Damage Done. He should give that to your guys, although I did for a very long time think it was a song about sewing. Right. That's what you think in Apple Creek.
Where are you going with this, Amanda?
Nowhere.
Daisy, there is a freedom of speech issue here. You know, Joe Rogan, right? The reason that he has become such a hero to so many people is he has these very long conversations. The podcast with Robert Malone, I listened to the whole thing. It's over 3 hours long.
Over 3 hours, yeah.
And, you know, I just find it chilling that we are now going to have very liberal celebrities using their weight to try and get Spotify to deplatform Joe Rogan.
So there are a number of things I think about this story. One thing is I think Neil Young has every right to choose what platform his music
100%.
goes on to. So if he doesn't want his music to be on Spotify, of course, that's completely up to him.
Exactly, but he could just quit. It's the fact that he's made this threat to
he's trying to
Spotify.
blackmail them. That's a different issue, obviously. But just saying, you know, he can do this. He's also rich enough to decide that he doesn't need Spotify. Doesn't need anyone else. I also think that Joe Rogan's programme often is really irresponsible, and I think that 3 hour... I looked at a lot of information that came out of that 3 hour interview he had with McCullough, I think is how you pronounce them, who is very well respected, and you know, Malone, who's not, who's the guy you had on, Robert, and
you say he's not very well respected.
No, a lot of what he said was provable, and a lot of what he said was not provable, and most people and most people think was really irresponsible.
Well, yes, but I would say about Robert Malone a couple of things. Number one, without him, it's possible that we wouldn't have mRNA vaccines at all. He's also double vaccinated, so he isn't some sort of anti-vaxxer. He's obviously spent
No,
his entire career developing these vaccines. So I know what he says goes against the mainstream media thing, which is that jabs, 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 jabs. It's the it should be compulsory.
What I'm trying to say, Dan, is I think he weakens his argument because he has some really valid points, but then sometimes he goes off on one, which, and he'll say things like he said in that exact podcast, multiple reports and research backs up one of his points. That's categorically not true. And so he weakens his overall argument, and his overall argument is good. However, going back to Neil Young, I absolutely don't want censorship. One of the reasons why that podcast is so well listened to is because of censorship in the rest of the mainstream media. So it's actually fanning the flame of some anti-vaxxers and vaccine.
We're not stupid, are we?
Skeptics.
Because we now see CNN's own health experts saying, oh no, cloth masks don't make a bit of difference, after them having said for the past 18 months that cloth masks are the way to stop this pandemic. Right. We also now see CNN experts saying, actually, vaccines don't stop transmission, when previously they said that this was the ticket out.
This science changes a lot, Dan, doesn't it?
Which is why...
It's almost monthly.
Exactly, but that's fine, because it is a new virus. We are in extraordinary times. It's a new type of vaccine. That's why I find it so terrifying that folk like Neil Young don't want to hear from someone like Robert Malone. Look, you don't have to listen, but personally, I think it's an important...
Is Joe Rogan now bigger than Neil Young?
Well, yeah, I think he is. And I think that's why Spotify...
Look at the numbers.
I honestly believe he's...
Look at the numbers.
I think he's more important to Spotify. What I think is concerning about the Neil Young thing is it's about who backs him. You know,
exactly
because if you get Taylor Swift, Meghan and Harry, Adele, Dua Lipa all joining Neil Young, believe me, we're in very different territory at that point.
But also, Dan, the other point, just a few weeks ago, 100 scientists also wrote to Spotify and said, take Joe Rogan off. He mustn't have these people. And I really disapprove of that, because most scientists who you speak to will tell you that there is, just like you were saying, nobody has all the answers. Everybody, in science knows that it's not an exact science.
Exactly.
It's literally not.
Exactly. Dan, give me a week on Twitter, I'll get another 100 scientists to write and say the opposite.
Yes, exactly. But that's my point. We should be listening to all scientists and not poo-pooing any of them.
Speaking of science, though, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, James Bond and Harry Potter have all famously depicted versions of flying cars, but a company in Slovakia are turning fiction into reality. Say hello to the Air Car, a supercar attached with wings and a propeller, so it's ready for takeoff. This footage, released in celebration of the craft officially being given its wings, shows it completing its first inner-city flight, remaining airborne for 30 minutes before being driven into the centre of Bratislava. Designed by Klein Vision, the car has just received an official European certification of airworthiness after completing 70 hours of flight testing, meaning it could become available to buy as early as next year. I'm sorry, I can assure you it's going to take more than 70 hours of testing before I strap myself in. 70 hours, 7,000 hours, and maybe I'll trust it. My goodness, Amanda Patel, Adam Brooks, Daisy McCann, you do stand by. My superstar panel will be nominating their Greatest Britain and Union Jackass in just a moment. But of course, I get to choose the winner. I'm excited by it. But next in Uncancelled, should students face harsher punishments and expulsion for trying to stifle free speech? Well, Rod Liddle has been investigating a report into education reform and has some inspired suggestions of his own. He'll lay them out in Uncancelled. That's in just a couple of moments' time. First, a quick look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, the unfiltered Toby Young joins star US journalist Megyn Kelly and GB News host Mark Dolan in providing world-class insight and analysis on the biggest news stories from around the globe. Plus, with the PM under continued fire as a result of Partygate, I'll get expert and balanced analysis from my superstar panel. The Tory grandee and broadcaster Michael Portillo, political editor of the Sunday Mirror Nigel Nelson, and Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. A year-long investigation has recommended a drastic overhaul of the education system to better the prospects of school and university students, thereby boosting the British economy. apparently by £125 billion a year. Sounds good, right? Interim findings of the Times Education Commission have been supported by business brains including Sir Richard Branson and Sir James Dyson, who are calling for a solution to the mismatch between what is prioritised in the classroom versus the office. Well, if there's one man I trust to save the next generation, it's columnist extraordinaire and brilliant big brain Rod Liddell, who has come up with a tough love 10-point battle plan to level up the education system and prepare our coddled kids for the harsh realities of the world. So, Rod, take me through it. What's your plan?
Well, I will, but I've got to express my solidarity with Neil Young first.
Oh, really?
I mean, oh, absolutely. If Neil Young doesn't want to be on Spotify, then he has every right not to be on Spotify. And incidentally, the comment that he left in 2015 over the sound quality was appalling. He was dead right.
OK, but Rod, what about threatening Spotify to go off this platform unless they take Joe Rogan down? That's actually what
he's not threatening. There's your choice. You want Neil Young or you want Rogan. You know, it's up to people to decide. It's entirely up to him. I don't go along with his entirely woke agenda, which I think has been engendered by his recent liaison with Daryl Hannah, who he's taken up with, why he's running around Canada trying to put out oil fires. But nonetheless, it's also, I'm sorry, Dan, it's a personal thing for me. You know, I was 13 when I bought On the Beach by Neil Young, and I've bought everything he's done since. He's a curmudgeonly and unpleasant man, and I've interviewed him. But he's a major talent, and it's entirely up to him. Anyway, sorry.
In defence of Neil Young, I love it. But yes, Rod, education. So this report comes out, but you actually have your own plan, which I want to hear about.
Well, I do, and I think quite a few people might go along with it. It's also partly a Social Democratic Party plan, although they don't know it yet. But it's important. It's important because we do have to transform the way education is done in this country because we are not educating kids for a modern economy. And what I think we need to do, first off, is selection at the age of 11. Not by an 11 plus, which easily favours the middle class kids, but by SATs tests that have been and assessments by teachers. But that's only 15% of the kids. What we need to do with and they would go to grammar schools. What we need to do with the other schools is to make them, as was envisaged in 1945, proper technical schools, where stuff like engineering and design and technology and computer programming and computer design and all that are given absolutely equivalent status in that syllabus with the academic subjects such as history and gender studies, you know, all that kind of stuff. That's what we need to do at the age of 11. I think we also need to reduce the number of people who go to university from the current 40%, which is the wrong aspiration of the Blair government. And the best person to tell you that was a wrong aspiration is Tony Blair's own son, Ewan, who thinks it's ludicrous. We need that down to about 15%. And at the same time, to make university entrance free, all tuition paid for by the government, which we could do if it was 15%. But then we need to give the same amount of kudos and status to apprenticeships, to vocational qualifications, to on-the-job training, to all that stuff which we have left behind that we give to university degrees. Because at the moment we have more than 100,000 jobs in engineering which we simply cannot fill, because instead we're channeling people into universities to do degrees at a cost of 30,000 quid, which rests upon their shoulders for the next 30 years, and which will give them no hope whatsoever of getting a job when they come out.
And Rob, what about... Oh, sorry, you go. I was just going to say, what about all of the, I would call it, I don't know how you would describe it, but the woke ideology that's been taught in schools? Do you think that needs to be tackled?
Absolutely, Dan. I mean, dead right. And right from the top, we ought to have zero tolerance of bad behaviour, and teachers ought to be instilling discipline and obedience to very, very old-fashioned ideas into those kids, so that there's a safer environment for the children, And the teachers are there as authority figures rather than as pretend best friends for their students, which is what we have too often at the moment.
And then, Rod, at sorry, I was just going to say, obviously, you've had this run-in at a university recently, which we spoke about. How would you protect freedom of thought at universities in your plan?
Well, two things. Firstly, to go back to comprehensive schools, or as they would now be, technical colleges and grammar schools, I think there should be no gender propaganda whatsoever piled into those schools. Nil, zilch, absolutely nothing, with the removal of Stonewall and all its machinations.
Okay.
At university, it should be absolutely clear to everybody who goes to university, and they should probably sign a proclamation to this extent when they go in. You have to be prepared to entertain views which differ from your own. It may not have occurred to you, but your own views may be asinine and stupid, and they must be counteracted. You must hear a divergence of opinion, whether you're on the right, whether you're on the left. No matter where you are, there should be no problem with you hearing things which may cause you offence if you're kind of lily-livered. And if you're incapable of doing that, you should not be at university.
Rod, I like it. Good plan. Thank you so much. That's Rod Little, assistant editor of The Spectator. Thank you, Rod. Time now for Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel back to reveal. There's Amanda Platel. Who's your nomination for Greatest Britain tonight?
Mine is Elton John. Now that he's got COVID, he's still going to go on with his world tour.
Which feels like it's never going to end because he keeps having to postpone it.
The reason I've nominated him is because I know the reason that you win on this show is if you nominate a treasured old queen.
Adam, your Greatest Britain nominee.
Mine is Morrison's Supermarkets for not enforcing masks from tomorrow.
I like that. Yeah, they said we'll be continuing to follow government guidelines. That means shoppers and Morrisons will be encouraged to make a considerate decision on whether to wear a face covering or not, but they will not have to wear masks by law. And that puts them in opposition with a supermarket like Sainsbury's. I think it's a really good call. Daisy McCann, your nomination for Greatest Britain.
My Greatest Britain tonight is Jack Monroe, who is the anti-poverty campaigner and chef. And she has been talking about how food prices have been soaring, but not reflected fairly in the official information because it's particularly the poorest or the cheapest foods that have gone up the most. So, your very, very basic pasta in a supermarket has gone up from sort of 15p to £1, whereas the more expensive food hasn't gone up anywhere near. It hasn't been reflected, and the ONS, Office for National Statistics, has listened to her and is changing it, which I thought was really impressive.
Yeah, exactly. And I listened to an interview with her about this, actually, and it's those very, very small increases that can really
make a massive
families
difference.
That are struggling. But I'm going to go with the supermarket. Good on you, Morrisons, because of course it should be our choice. We're free from tomorrow. We're unmuzzled. And I will not be wearing a mask, a muzzle in a supermarket. And so I want to shop at Morrisons now because they are making me feel comfortable doing that. But Amanda, sort of similar food theme for your Union Jackass?
Yeah, I'm on the food theme. I love him, but I'm really disappointed in Jamie Oliver, because he's slagging all of us off, saying, you're being lazy, getting takeaways and eating junk food while you've been in lockdown, and you're all getting fat, and you should be doing my recipes at home. Well, I just wondered if Jamie had looked in the mirror recently at his own waistline.
Oh, Amanda!
I'm sorry, Dan, it's true.
Low blow.
It is true.
All right, Cindy Crawford.
But actually, we should all be supporting restaurants and pubs like Adam's and using Deliveroo to
and
help
actually,
hospitality.
you can get healthy food if you can afford it.
Of course you can.
Adam,
mine is Establishment Journo Polly Hudson for an article saying the unvaccinated need to be forced, and they'll also get jabbed or else. I think it's disgusting.
OK, she's a very, very nice person, I think, but yeah, not a good thing to say. And Daisy McCandrew, your Union Jackass nomination.
I'm afraid I'm going for Connor Burns because I thought that comment about being ambushed by a cake was so stupid.
But he was ambushed by a cake.
No, it completely it was clever in a way if what you wanted to achieve was to take all the attention away from the really bad things that Number 10 had done and turned it into a big joke. But it was a bloody stupid thing to say.
OK, well, I'm going with Amanda here. I think, even though I disagree with her slagging off Jamie for his weight, by the way, I think the comment was stupid because actually food delivery services aren't necessarily a bad thing. Amanda Patel, Daisy McAndrew, Adam Brooks, what a fabulous superstar panel. I've loved it tonight. I'm back again tomorrow, though, from 9 p.m. Michael Portillo is here, big political day. Time now for headliners, though. Good night.
Hello again. For most, we've seen a lot of cloud this week, but generally it's looking brighter tomorrow with some sunny spells. Quite a strong wind blowing at first, but that'll ease, and quite mild as well, especially across the south. Low pressure is moving in, but high pressure is still hanging on across the south. These weather fronts bringing some rain to the northwest, but as that low moves close to the far north of Shetland, we are going to see some very strong winds across northern Scotland overnight. Blustery and damp through Northern Ireland, central Scotland, Northern Ireland. But across Orkney in particular and parts of the north of the mainland, those winds could reach 70 to 75 miles an hour. There is a Met Office yellow warning in place. Further south, well, the breeze picks up, it stays quite cloudy and most of us will be frost-free, but not completely rain-free in the morning. Quite dull and damp across Wales, particularly Cardiff, Swansea, and there'll be some patchy rain trickling into southwest England. Not much rain further east. There will be showers coming into the northeast of Scotland, a bit wintry over the hills, and still very windy here in the morning, but the wind's steadily easing down and the breeze easing down elsewhere. So with the sunny spells that most of us will see, feeling quite pleasant with temperatures in the south, 11 or 12 Celsius, Glasgow 9, Belfast 9 or 10 as well. Feeling colder in the wind in the northeast, which will still bring a few showers here during Thursday evening, but for most it'll be light winds on Thursday night, leading into quite a cold start on Friday morning. More likely to see pockets of frost around to begin with on Friday, but we're also going to see some fine sunny weather again on Friday morning before things steadily cloud over from the west. Again, there'll be some rain at times across northern and western Scotland, and we could see a little bit for Northern Ireland, northwest England and Wales come the end of the day. But it looks fairly light and patchy. East Anglia, southeast England hanging on to the brightness, but definitely more changeable in the outlook, and there is the possibility of some wet and windy weather on Sunday.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across